Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Zyko. I'm the head of sales at CoinList. I'm here with Carolyn Reckow and McLean Wilkinson from um, Keep and NewCipher, respectively. And we're here today to talk about novel token distribution mechanisms. And I thought it made sense to bring both of these teams in because they are introducing their native tokens to the world in a different way than most of us are used to. So at CoinList, we've done a lot of token sales in the past. We've done airdrops, and they are trying two unique approaches. So beyond introducing privacy to blockchains, which both of your projects aspire to do, you're both also introducing tokens in a unique way with the work lock at NewCipher and the stake drop at Keep. Could you tell us a little bit more about each of these mechanisms and how one would get started? McLean.
Sure. So just to set the context, I'll give like a 30-second overview of NewCipher, the network, and what the token does. It's important to understand kind of the function of the token to understand like the motivations and mechanics of the work lock. But the NewCipher network is a layer 2 network. It's built on top of Ethereum, and it's a decentralized threshold cryptography network. So we basically provide a set of interfaces and runtimes that expose different threshold cryptographic primitives. The first of those is something called proxy re-encryption to developers. So basically, there's the NewCipher nodes all basically provide this service, whether it's proxy re-encryption or threshold signatures or Shamir secret sharing or any kind of threshold cryptography in principle could be run on these nodes. And the way that where the token comes into the equation is if you want to be one of these nodes, if you want to operate one of these nodes, provide the service and basically earn fees paid by users, you have to stake the native NewCipher token as a kind of bond or collateral. So I think some people call this model like a work token. So you stake the token that allows you to run a node, that allows you to do work for the network. You get paid for that work. In our case, you get paid in ETH, not in the native token. So the native token just is acting as this stake. And then it also has some governance aspects where there's a DAO that effectively governs the network and all the parameters around the network, such as fee ranges, things like that. And if you're a staker, you also have basically the ability to participate and submit proposals and validate proposals in the DAO. And what the work lock is basically this mechanism that we've created to distribute the initial set of tokens. And it's different, as you said, from a typical ICO or some centralized entity that's effectively selling these tokens in a kind of financing event. And the way that it works is you essentially stake ETH. That allows you to run a NewCipher node. And then if you do that, you're able to earn NewCipher tokens in exchange for running this node. The way that we structured it, although you could imagine structuring it several different ways, but the way that we structured it for our network is that there is an initial contribution period where you're essentially escrowing ETH on chain into the work lock contract. Once that contribution period ends, the network will start. So all the tokens will get distributed. You'll be able to start operating these NewCipher nodes and over time earning new tokens.
Got it. That's super interesting. And Carolyn, how does that compare to what Keep is doing with its stake drop?
Yeah, so Keep Network, like you said, similarly focuses on privacy. It's a privacy layer on top of Ethereum. But what makes us different, one of the things is we're focusing a lot on interoperability for our first privacy use case, and TBTC is the first killer app. I bet a bunch of folks out there have heard of TBTC, Bitcoin on Ethereum, trustless bridge. And basically the way that Keep works is also uses secure multi-party computation, uses threshold signature technology, ECDSA, SIGs, but it also has this component called the random beacon, which is used for work selection. And with those two components, you'd need to stake Keep Keep token is a work token. And in our mechanism, you have to hold it and stake it to participate in random beacon selection, to run the random beacon client, and then also to participate in the TBTC system. And the TBTC system requires Keep, but also requires an additional ETH bond. That's how TBTC works. You need to secure the Bitcoin deposits on the signer side with ETH. And what we're doing for this distribution, this stake drop program, is that we're saying for a period of time during the stake drop, we're inviting people who aren't current Keep token holders to come and to stake their ETH for TBTC and earn Keep if they're successful in staking, if they're able to be a good liquidity provider for the network, they're able to stake successfully, then they can continue to participate in the network and earn fees in ETH and in Keep with the distribution as well.
Got it. So this is something that hasn't really been tried out a lot. There's something somewhat similar last year with Edgeware's lock drop. McLean, you came out with a blog post introducing the work lock back in March of 2019. What was some of the inspiration for the work lock, and is there something that's specific around work tokens that you think for both of you this makes sense using this type of distribution mechanism versus another chosen path?
Yeah, so for us, I think the motivation basically was, as we were getting closer to our mainnet launch, we were thinking about how we wanted to obviously distribute that sort of initial set of tokens and the initial stake, and basically how we would decide this initial staker set. And obviously, we were familiar, we had started the project back in 2017 when, right just before sort of ICOs went crazy. So we were very familiar sort of with that whole scene and had a pretty good sense that wasn't really interesting to us or even really an effective way to distribute tokens in order to get kind of a robust set of stakers into the network. And so we were kind of looking around at various different sort of token distribution experiments. You mentioned one was the Edgeware lock drop. But what we were really interested in was something called the Merkle mine from Livepeer. And we thought that was really worthwhile distribution experiment. Basically, what they did is that they allowed people to essentially mine Livepeer token by creating something called a Merkle proof and submitting that to the blockchain. So in some ways, it was kind of mimicking like a proof of work distribution. And it was really interesting to us because one, it was sort of totally decentralized, totally permissionless. They didn't control who could and couldn't mine Livepeer tokens. And so it was really compelling on that front. It had a couple, issues that they ran into, like it bloated the blockchain. I think it spiked gas fees. So we sort of spent some time looking at that model, speaking with their team, and tried basically with the work lock to take like the interesting aspects of that, but potentially at least attempt to improve upon some of the problems with it. And specifically, instead of this Merkle proof, which is just basically this pointless work, it's not work that provides any value or any service other than just mining the proof, but instead tying the actual work that you do in order to earn that native token to the work that you would actually do in the network itself. So in NuCypher's or in the context of NuCypher, that would be operating a NuCypher node. In the context, of another project, it would be doing whatever work, however work is defined in that system. So I think it's very well suited for work tokens like NuCypher and Keep and Livepeer and others. But I don't think it's necessarily limited to those types of projects. I mean, I think you can think of this whole yield farming craze that's happening right now is kind of very similar to a work lock or a stake drop, where they're basically providing, in many cases, liquidity or some type of work, however it's defined in that protocol, in order to earn or farm these native tokens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On our side, a lot of similar stuff in terms of early inspiration. We looked at Edgeware, like you said, LivePeer we were inspired by. You guys, of course, you guys announced before we did. That was like, okay, signs we're on the right path. But we also looked at communities like the Cosmos ecosystem. We looked at them and thought, like that's the type of community and ecosystem that we want to emulate. These are folks that aren't necessarily as concerned with maybe like the market investment side, but they're really active community members in terms of like just staking and technically contributing. So we were thinking about everything, like even proof of work at one point, but we did decide to go down this path because Keep is this work token, and essentially it's just the best way to that we found to have a distributed network of good community members, people who have proved that they can stake and contribute to the network.
Got it. And since there is this craze around liquidity mining and how that can bootstrap a network, I'm curious if there's anything that you guys have seen or learned in the past couple of weeks that has changed or modified your thinking on how you guys might want to approach this since you haven't started yet.
Well, I think certainly it's been exciting to see, just because it sort of validates in a sense our hypothesis that people want to earn on their ETH, and they're willing to use their ETH in novel ways to lock it up, to try new mechanisms. And so, to us, we do think that this is going to lead to the best distribution possible for Keep, just because it looks like people want it.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So both of you guys have talked about the communities that surround the projects and just more broadly in crypto. But looking at both the work lock and the stake drop, it definitely requires some technical chops. Like you have to know how to run a node. Carolyn, I logged into your Crowdcast and got tripped up on some steps once I needed to deploy a node. So how are you guys thinking through like who you expect to participate? What are the different ways that people can onboard into each of the respective mechanisms for distribution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I definitely agree. There's a lot of technical barriers, and for Keep, there may even be more barriers than to NuCypher. I think for us, you need to run a full node to participate, right? You can't just give your ETH to somebody else running a node. You're not going to earn that way. So it does take some time. There's a learning curve and a certain amount of technical chops. And we're targeting folks that have done other incentivized testnets like Cosmos and stuff like that. But what we're doing to help participants have some time and be incentivized to learn how to do this is our own incentivized testnet called Plating for Keeps. And we're giving away Keep to folks who get staking early on testnet and figure it out. We're giving away Keep to folks who do translations, who write guides, who are community members that help other community members get up and going. And then, of course, there's a lot of work on our end too, just making sure that our resources are up to date. So it's a lot of stuff to get people going for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely more than an ICO where you have a contract address and you send your ETH and you get back tokens and that's it. You have to figure out how to, basically right now we provide a work lock interface for participating in the work lock, which what we provide is just a command line tool. So you have to know your way around a command line. There are a few community members who during our incentivized testnet built like web UIs so that you can participate from like some Web3 wallet like MetaMask. But even beyond just the initial contribution step, obviously after that, you have to actually do the work of running a node. So it's not passive. You have to, either yourself or someone on your behalf has to operate this node for you. So if you're going to do it yourself, obviously you need some sort of like DevOps or sysadmin type skills. You need to be able to keep the node available and online and well protected and basically servicing the network. We do have a few partners who I think are working on basically offerings that make it that obfuscate some of that for people. So they'll basically run the node on your behalf. They might provide kind of a nice web UI type interface to participate from a kind of pooled wallet. So I do expect that will be an option. But yeah, if you're participating on your own in a non-custodial way, with your own ETH, running your own node, you do need to actually do the work.
Got it. That makes sense. And as far as expectations from the community or users, can you talk a little bit more about the distribution? So how many tokens are being distributed? What percentage of the network? How should a prospective participant be looking at this when they're considering the other options that are out there for, they could get into liquidity mining or go somewhere else and provide ETH and Compound, for instance?
Yeah. So on our end, we just worked with Messari to launch our transparency report, and that's probably the best resource to check out right now, just in terms of it's got our entire schedule and everything there, our roadmap. But basically, when it comes to Keep, it's a fixed supply, billion tokens, and we have set aside 20% for this stake drop. And in terms of doing your research, I would check out. So we're working with a bunch of staking providers like Staked, Figment, and Bison Trails, and I think it was Bison Trails that did some early research on just what yield is going to look like. So I checked that out as well. I think that they've made that public, and it's looking pretty good. From what they're showing. So that would be my recommendation for research.
Got it.
For NuCypher, so we're actually distributing. So most of the tokens, the NuCypher tokens, actually go to the stakers over time. So most of the NuCypher tokens, about 75% of them are actually mined over the course of the network's life. But of the initial tokens, 25% of the initial tokens are going out through the work lock. We also distributed approximately 2% through our come and stake it incentivized testnet. So we ran several test iterations of the work lock and obviously test iterations of the network itself during that period. Another 2% are going to what we call our university staking program. So we've got about a dozen or so universities around the world, like the University College London, Waterloo, Berkeley. They're going to be running nodes for the network as well. So we've done, beyond just the work lock, we've done several other programs to try to ensure that we have a very strong and robust staker set at launch. But 25% go out through the work lock. In terms of where you allocate your ETH, I think that's one thing that's been super interesting, not just between Keep and NuCypher, but also all the other protocols that are like Comp that are starting to do like this yield farming thing, or turning ETH essentially into this productive asset, which I think is a really interesting phenomenon. Whether you should put that into the stake drop or work lock or Curve or anything else, I can't answer for you. I think all those different models sort of require different things and have different risk profiles for that ETH. So in Keep and NuCypher's case, you actually have to run a node, where in some of the other sort of liquidity provisioning protocols, you might just sort of be passively providing that ETH. So I think probably the hurdle for participating in a work lock or a stake drop are probably higher than just passively putting it into some of these automated market makers, for example. So it maybe not only depends on sort of what you think the return profile is going to be, but what your skill set as a participant is.
Mm. And I'll also add, you reminded me, so in addition to the 20% for the stake drop, about 2% of the supply has gone, or is going to go to playing for keeps. So the incentivized testnet that's happening right now. And then also we've got an additional 5% that we put aside for TBTC liquidity rewards, which we haven't really announced yet. That's coming soon, information about exactly what that's going to be. But it's going to be a mix of the types of liquidity rewards that you're used to seeing if you're, big into DeFi and you're yield farming out there. But also some interesting stuff for folks that are maybe less technically DeFi proficient. Maybe if you have Bitcoin, there'll be a way to use that and get some Keep liquidity rewards as well.
That's awesome. You both have mentioned the incentivized testnet a number of times. During the incentivized testnet, any key learnings as it relates to distribution that came out of it? Any discoveries, vulnerabilities, things that people saw like, oh, this doesn't quite work the way it was expected to, or has been pretty smooth and kind of moving forward as planned?
Yeah, so for us in our incentivized testnet, like going in, we had a couple specific goals. So one was obviously to provide a way for people to earn new tokens based off of merit, as opposed to having a lot of capital. So basically, particularly people that maybe are smaller stakers, so maybe not these large professional staking operations, although of course we had a lot of those folks participate as well. So that was one goal. Another goal was not to make it like a kind of competitive type testnet like some of the other incentivized testnets we've seen, but more as a way to prepare and to train node operators for mainnet, so that we can have as much of like the learning and the iteration and the mistakes in terms of like people spinning up their nodes and joining the network happening during testnet, where the stakes are obviously much lower, versus right during like the sort of that initial mainnet period. Sure. So we are optimistic that the work we did there, like having everyone spin up nodes and join the network more or less at the same time, will make like the actual mainnet transition a lot smoother. So we wanted to concentrate kind of like that learning period there. And obviously the third piece was we wanted just to stress test the network and see how it operates at scale. So I think during the incentivized testnet, like at peak, there was something like 1,000, low 1,000 nodes operating at once, which was a pretty significant number. And so it was really interesting to see, what were kind of the breaking points in terms of actual like learnings that impacted what we or changed what we were planning to do. We did several test iterations of the work lock on testnet, and there were some interesting sort of edge cases that under like the way we had currently basically structured the work lock, some weird edge cases could potentially result in somewhat skewed token distributions through the work lock, where like a whale or someone who did like these not attacks, but like if they tried to game the work lock, they could potentially earn a disproportionate share of new tokens. So we kind of changed some of the rules and the structure and the parameters for the work lock that will help us kind of avoid those sorts of scenarios.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's interesting to hear, because, we're still, I think we're just in month 2 of our incentivized testnet that's going to last at least 6 months. And, of course, there's been some learnings already on the technical side. It's always super helpful to just get going on testnet and work out some of those kinks. But I think for us, since our incentivized testnet is not just about staking on testnet, we're also including other contributions. We're asking every month, it changes a little bit what we're asking for. We're always baseline. We want people to get on testnet and to stake. That's the priority. But some months we've got a judge that's interested in, this month we've got Spencer Noon that really wants to see data and metrics, like build some cool dApps or some interfaces that show us what's happening on TBTC or Keep. We've got other judges down the line that want to see different types of TBTC or Keep dApps. We've got folks that are interested in documentation and translation. So like, let's reach other international communities. And so that's been, I think, great in terms of just building community, but then there's also the balance of, making sure that the rewards distribution really hit what is the heaviest, most important thing for us, which is staking successfully for the health of the network. So it's just been learning process as we roll out this incentivized testnet that has these different levels.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an experiment, and I'm curious if you guys are, if you had to kind of predict, are there teams kind of reaching out to you that are looking to explore something similar? Or do you find that, or you think that this is a new approach that more teams are going to be utilizing moving forward based on maybe feedback you've gotten directly?
Yeah, so I won't name any specific teams. I don't want to like steal their thunder, but I know
Sure.
that there are several other kind of like networks that are similarly situated or architected as NuCypher and Keep that are sort of looking at similar types of work lock or stake drop style distributions. And then, obviously, like I think the most notable example is just DeFi as a whole. I think there's been,
Sure.
tons of examples of this
Yeah.
happening sort of as we speak, which is getting tons of attention. So I think, I think certainly like tying token distributions to work is strictly better than, like the 2017 era, public ICOs. There are obviously like a lot of problems that or a lot of things that could still be improved even over and above, what we've come up with and what sort of the DeFi folks have come up with. But I do think in general, it's a positive direction for projects to be moving towards in terms of how they do their token distributions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Won't go into details about teams, but I'll just say I think it goes back to your first question around yield farming and DeFi, right? I think that this is something that we're going to see people continuing to experiment with and iterate on, because we are seeing people want this. They want to earn with their ETH or their tokens that they already have. And if they can support a new network, great.
Yeah, you guys alluded to this already, but with only a couple of minutes left here, if someone's holding ETH, they want to get started, where should they go? I think you guys mentioned some materials. What would be a good place to start or send them now?
Well, for Keep, the best way to get started is to join our Discord. We kind of have this flow where we point you right towards our guides to get you going. And then we've got community members that can help in different channels. And so that's our Discord. It's chat.keep.network. So yeah, come jump on in and all the stuff's there.
Awesome.
And for NuCypher, more or less the same. We do everything in Discord. It's discord.nucypher.com. We have a testnet faucet in that Discord. So I think the best thing to do right now as we get ready for the actual mainnet work lock is that you can grab testnet new tokens from that faucet, and you can join the NuCypher testnet and just practice running a node, work out any of the kinks before we do everything for real.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, I'm for one really looking forward to seeing how both these go and participating in each. Definitely earned some tokens from both. But yeah, it was nice speaking with you both today.
Likewise. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Caroline.
Thanks.
Thank you.